Is the United States of America a democracy? I've been asking that question for years to teachers, professors, other people, and I've always wondered, especially with what goes on in the United States government as far as policies, uh, procedures, laws that are enacted. So let's get into one of the articles here, and it's a BBC article from April 17th, 2014, which is dated, but it's a pretty good article. And it says, study, U.S. is an oligarchy, not a democracy. So, if you want to read a little bit more there, I'll put this on screen. It's already on screen. So, two professors, uh, Professor Martin Gillens of Princeton and Benjamin Page from Northwestern University, did a study from 1981 to 2002 on public policies. They broke it down by income and measured what policies were passed. What they found is the low support from elites, 1 to 5, in favor of that policy, that particular policy change, was only adopted about 18% of the time, while high support from the elites, 4 to 5 in favor, that was adopted 45% of the time. So here's a study that kind of breaks down, all right, maybe the United States, the mass population, maybe they're not listening to them. They're listening more to the elites. They're more, there's more favor going to the elites. And that's what that study shows. Now, all studies, they do have their flaws. You could critique this as much as possible. You could say, this is not a good study by these two professors, but I think it's a good study, even though their survey questions and they conducted it from 1981 to 2002. There are discrepancies, but I think they have a point here. I think what they conclude here on their study is Americans do enjoy many features central to democratic governance, such as regular elections, freedom of speech, and association, and a widespread, if still contested, franchise. But we believe that if policymaking is dominated by powerful business organizations and a small number of affluent Americans, then America's claim to being a democratic society are seriously threatened. So even though we enjoy the democratic process, right, our democracy might be threatened by basically powerful corporations and the elites. And I think they're right here. And I think it's already been done. Okay, and I think it's been done for not a couple of years, the past 100 years. It's just been a gradual incline throughout the years. And right now we're seeing it, right? Let me give you an example here. You have the super PACs in elections that spill the pot in or that influence, right, the House of Representatives, some of those candidates, the Senate races, the governor races, and especially the president races. And those super PACs are usually funded by elites and business organizations or corporations. So they are making a point here. They're not saying that the elections. It doesn't look like they're saying anything about the elections. That was just made. I just made that statement because it's kind of obvious, right? Look at this last election. Look how much Hillary was pumped up. Look how much even Donald Trump was pumped up by the super PACs. Look at all the ads, look at all the promotion, what have you, okay? And then the little candidates, the little guys, the grassroots guys, no, they barely got even a show, okay? In addition, Eric Zeus, writing in Counterpunch, isn't surprised by the survey results. Writing for Counterpunch, it should say. American democracy is a sham. No matter how much it's pumped by the oligarchs who run the country and who control the nation's news media, he writes, the U.S., in other words, is basically similar to Russia or most dubious electoral democratic countries we weren't formerly, but we are now. He's got a point, okay? To me, the U.S. democracy is a sham. It is a parade, in my view, okay? It is a parade of you common people have the choice. The proletariat has a choice. The proletariat can choose his own candidate, can choose his own policies, yada, yada, yada. When the opposite is true, it's the elite that chooses the candidates, and it's the elite that pushes the policy, any type of policies, through the United States government. And but here's where I disagree with this particular quotation. It's basically similar to Russia. You know, there's debate on that. I kind of debate that a little bit. I don't think we've gone so far into the Russian, the Russian government and its corrupt policies and whatnot. We aren't too far off, but I don't think we've gone that far because Russia isn't hiding anything, okay? And Russia is blatantly taking resources. It's just a different feel, you know what I'm saying? And I'm not saying the United States hasn't done any wrongdoing either, okay? They messed in North, or not in North, but they messed around in South America with all those coups back in the 70s and 80s. They're still messing in world affairs now. They're still trying to get and maintain resources, you know. So we're not angels either, but I don't think we're as bad as Russia. And I'll add this too. And I touched on this in a previous video. The Patriot Act took our civil liberties away. Now, you would say, what does this have to do with anything about the United States being an oligarch? Well, keep this in mind. Although they didn't need to really pass it, okay? I mean, before the Patriot Act, there was no threat of this, but you want to keep the proletariats in check, right? So you don't want the masses to overthrow the government. They don't want something that happened with Lenin in the Communist Revolution to happen in the United States. So what did they do? What did they do? They take an event like 9/11. They say, okay, we need the Patriot Act. We need to have security in our country, yada, yada, yada. What it really is a form of control of the mass population. And one of the reasons is because they don't want a communist revolution. They don't want any type of riots. They want to suppress that completely. If in fact entirely, okay? They want to control their people. They want to get them to think about something else. They want to get them to think about this terrorism stuff that is happening. Not saying that terrorism doesn't exist. I'm just saying that there's too much attention on it. How does this benefit the elites? It benefits the elites because it leaves them in power. They do not have an existential threat. Okay, they do not have the proletariats wanting revenge, rather. Although there are people that talk about that, there are people that protest against the rich. I really doubt that anytime soon we're going to have a revolution against the rich or the elite. It's just not going to happen. And an overthrow of the government will never happen because of the Patriot Act. Not only because of the Patriot Act, it's because, there's a tight grip on control in general in the United States. We do have one of the freest. We are one of the freest nations. Don't get me wrong. Okay, we have freedom of speech. We do have freedoms that other countries don't have. But one thing that we should have a right on, which a founding father, I think it was Thomas Jefferson, said. I think it was Thomas Jefferson. We should basically have a right to change governments if we wanted to. We don't have that right. Okay. So, to me, this kind of solidifies for me that the U.S. is actually an oligarchy. Let's go to another article, and I'm just going to bring up a quotation that was said by Jimmy Carter. What he was asked a question, or his opinion, on the 2010 Citizens United decision and the 2014 McCutcheon decision. These two historic decisions enabled unlimited secret money, including foreign money, now to pour into the political and judicial campaigns. Carter answered, and this is from 8/3/2015, and it's from the Huffington Post. He says it violates the essence of what made America a great country in its political system. Now it's just an oligarchy with unlimited political bribery being essence of getting the nomination for president or even being elected president. And the same thing applies to governors and U.S. senators and Congress members. So now we've just seen a subversion of our political system as a payoff to major contributors who want and expect and sometimes favor for themselves, or get a favor for themselves after the election is over. At the present time, the incumbents, Democrats, Republicans, look upon unlimited money as a great benefit to themselves. All right, so the last sentence doesn't really make sense to me. That's why I'm not reading it out loud. Which says somebody that is already in Congress has a great deal more to sell. I don't know what he means by that. I guess he means that, all right, they can sell out more. They can get more for their campaigns and fulfill favors, is what I'm guessing he means in there. But he basically broke it down. He basically said that America is an oligarchy that has political bribery. And it's a little odd because even before this, it was political bribery. You had to have money to run for Congress. You had to have money to run for Senate. You had to have money to run, especially for president. That happened way before these two decisions came on board. But I guess he's saying this now because it's ridiculous, and it is ridiculous. The fact that corporations, the fact that foreign money can pump into our political system and influence our elections is just insane. And another thing to note here is, when's the last time you've seen a grassroots person running for Senate, running for even Congress or the governorship? Okay, when have you seen that? It's always been a mainline person. It's always been a businessman that has money. It's always been, um, it's just, I haven't seen grassroots in a long time. Very rarely have I seen grassroots. I'm sure it happens, all right, but usually they're pumped. Usually when there's a Republican candidate or a Democratic candidate, they automatically get funding from CPAC. They automatically get funding from whatever group. It's just insane. It's really insane. And you know, the problem here is with the unlimited campaign money. The problem here is these politicians get bought out. They'll enact policies that favor, their biggest donors, of course. And America turns into a oligarchy that has bribery and that has the elite influencing them. Very dangerous. So, that is that. I just wanted to touch on this quotation. I'm not going to make this video long. And let's go to our last article, and then I'll go to the Wikipedia page on what the definition of an oligarchy is. All right, so basically what this site says, it says something completely different. They say, no, the U.S. is not an oligarchy. And this was written by Stephanie Slade, May 14th, 2016. So, there's 2 points here. It's rare for the middle class and the rich to disagree. And when they do, it's a coin flip. So, I want to touch on the first point here. And this was a statement that was made by J. Alexander Bramman of University of Texas at Austin. So, the first statement, rare for the middle class to disagree with the rich. It depends what you're defining middle class as, okay? It depends. What are you defining middle class as? And what about the lower class? There is a lower class in the United States, believe it or not. So I think if it was branched out like that, because he's referring to I guess a panel. He was at a panel of American Association of Public Opinion Research, and he presented the findings of a paper suggesting that dramatic claims are wrong. So this is where it's coming from. All right, let's look at the paper too. Why not? All right, so basically, out of the paper he looked at, 1,779 potential public policies that were under consideration during a 22-year period. All right, it's the same data set as Gillen's and Page use. It found that 9 times out of 10, a majority of rich people, or at the 90% income percentile or above, have the same policy preference as the majority of the middle class, or those at the 50th income percentile, according to public opinion surveys. See, that's not a good range for me to be honest. I think if you broke it down even more, I think this would be more valid. But I'm not a statistician here. I'm not proving to be one. So you might disagree with me on that. So out of this, there were only 185 cases that the opposite have occurred. In that 185, the 50% percentile, which is the middle class, got its way 87 times for a win rate of 47%, and the rich people, who are in the 90th percent, won 53% of the time. So he disagrees with this. He disagrees that the U.S. is becoming an oligarchy. However, the rich people did get their way 53% out of 47. Okay? 53% out of 47%. The middle class only won 87 times. So, all right, let's bring out a calculator. Why not? I'm doing this as I go, so I'm going to bring up a calculator here. All right, so let's do 185 minus 87. That's 98. So they won 98 times, and the rich people, right, the elite, they won 98 times, and the middle class only won 87 times. So I really don't understand this article, because the middle class is still at a deficit. They're still behind. They're not. It's not like it's middle class 47%, and the elites are at, or rather, it's not vice versa, right? The higher percentage is with the rich people. So, I mean, you could say, right? You could make an argument here that the United States is actually dipping towards an oligarchy, right? You can say it's not really an oligarchy yet, but it could turn out as an oligarchy. You can make that argument, but you can't really make an argument off of this finding here and say that it's not exactly the stuff of oligarchies. You can't really make a criticism about it. It's not really. You could make an argument it's balanced, right? But there's still a deficit here. It's not a big margin, right? You're not looking at 60% out of 40% or 70% out of 30%, but you're still looking at a deficit that is in favor of the elites. So in conclusion of this, before I get to the definition of an oligarchy, in the conclusion of this, in my opinion, the U.S. is turning into an oligarchy. All right. If not, it's an oligarchy already. And actually, I should redact that. The United States is an oligarchy and is dipping more towards an oligarchy every year. You could make the argument that it is still democracy, but it's dipping towards an oligarchy. But to say that it's still a democracy after reading 3 of these articles, now I know this is not a broad spectrum here. I know this is not a broad research by me, but it's just a snapshot. And I think if you would look at more studies, more articles, and just the history of this, because I'm sure if you look back, you're going to find proof that, hey, wait a minute, the United States doesn't really act like a democracy. It acts like an oligarchy. It's benefiting the elites. I think it would be more proof that the United States is dipping towards an oligarchy. But just real quick, what is an oligarchy? I should have said that in the beginning of the video. So what an oligarchy is a form of power structure in which power rests with a small number of people. These people might be distinguished by nobility, wealth, family ties, education, corporate, religious, military control. So look at our country right now, and how are the officials getting elected? They're getting elected by campaigns. Who are the campaigns funded by? Mostly the elite, the corporations, right? So that's a small influence of people. The policies that are enacted in the United States, who do they mainly benefit? Even back when Obama was in office, who do they mainly benefit? They mainly benefit the rich, right? Especially with that trade bill that Obama passed through last year, or not? Yeah, I think it was last year, right? Um, it benefits the elite. You know, everything kind of benefits the elite in the United States government. Even wars. You look at wars. The people who benefit in wars, even though it's costly to the government, are contractors, right? Raytheon, Lockheed Martin, General Dynamics, Honeywell. They all benefit off of those wars because the United States needs equipment, right? The United States needs infrastructure for the wars, right? Who comes in? The contractors. So they make money. And you have acts, questionable acts, like the Patriot Act that takes civil liberties away. Who is that for? Who is that really for? Is that for everybody, including the elite? Or is that just for the little proletariats who could one day rise up and say no more? And it's the latter. It's towards the proletariat. So, in conclusion, I think the United States has been an oligarchy for a long time. It's never going to change. There's nothing that we can do to turn the tide. Um, I just don't think, because I think everything's been tied up. Everything's been knotted up to where we will never be an influence. I think it's too late. But, that's me. That's me being a pessimist. I'd like to hear your opinion. If anybody watches this, right, I'd like to hear your opinion. What you think, where I got things wrong. Keep in mind that I did this video on a whim, took a couple articles, uh, referred back to information and things that I've seen in the past. Okay, this is not research. This is not, some type of educational thing. This is just one man's opinion. Thank you and have a great evening. Or afternoon, rather.